And today I'd like to talk about an issue that's very much on my mind for certainly a few decades. I think I've been very influenced by Ahavah and Marat students, and that's the issue of the environment. Because in this week's Parshat Shoftim, and we dedicate an entire ma'amar to this particular idea. There is discussion of the environment, and the Torah talks about how we conduct ourselves in war. So let's take a look at the text. It's actually a magnificent text, and it further is an elaboration on what we've been saying. We've spent years talking about narrative. I think one year we did the Binding of Isaac. I think we did 2 sentences the whole year, something like that. But the Torah has all kinds of different texts. And it has a text here about war and conduct in war. And let's take a look at a couple of the sentences. It's Deuteronomy chapter 20. And I believe it's sentence 19. So Shuli, of course, will, as usual, always has it on the board. Ki tatsur el ir yamim rabim. When you war against the city, lihilachem aleha. When you war against the city, you have to besiege it a long time in order to capture it. I don't know if I like that translation that much, even though this is Sefaria and their translations are very good translations. I think it means when you besiege a city for many days to wage war against it, and your goal is to seize it. Litafsa. Lo tashlit et eitza lindoach alav garzen. Really, this is quite a sentence. So we're warring against the city. We're in war. You must not destroy its trees, wielding the axe against them. You shall not destroy the trees. Why? Ki mimenu tochel. You should not destroy the trees because ki mimenu tochel. Again, the translation here, I'm not that happy with. And we have to think about this, Shuli, because we're thinking of using this Faria translation on a humble Haggadah that I've been working on. Here it says, you may eat of them. I think the better translation is, don't destroy the trees by swinging an axe against them, for from it you will eat. Ki mimenu tochel. You will eat from the tree, va'oto lo tichrot, and don't, va'oto lo tichrot, and therefore you eat from it, and therefore don't cut it down. And then you have this magnificent phrase, which is the subject of our little shiur here. Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh. Now again, this Sefaria translation is building in the Rashi, but what ki adam eitz hasadeh on its face means, don't fell trees, because human beings depend upon trees to live. Ki mimenu tochel. So don't cut the trees down. Ki ha'adam, because the human being eitz hasadeh. We're dependent upon trees. We're dependent upon its fruit. Lavo miponecha b'matzar, and therefore you should not besiege the city in this way. So if I can face everyone for a moment.
Rabbi, can I just say that this is a JPS translation, not Sefaria's?
Yes, I'd love to see the Sefaria translation. But ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh, don't cut the tree, says the Ibn Ezra. Now, The Ibn Ezra was a great, great literalist. If you want the literal interpretation with no sense of midrash that we always talk about, that Estelle loves, the midrash, which reads into it and tries to extrapolate all kinds of lessons. The Ibn Ezra is a literalist. He sees a sentence and translates it. That's the end of it. Why shouldn't you cut it down? Ki Adam, because the human being is dependent upon the Eitz HaSadeh, is dependent. We need food, and therefore we consume what comes from many of the trees. Rashi is more of a Rebbe, and so he's going to read into the text and try to find meaning in the text. What I've said many times, my son, the scholar, says to me, Abba, we learn the same text. I try to find out what the text means, and you're trying to find meaning in the text. In other words, my son is a literalist, and I'm trying to do the midrash. I'm trying to find out what's the meaning in the text. And I actually think Elu both make sense. Says Rashi, he understands Ki Adam Eitz HaSadeh differently. He understands it as a question. Ki ha'adam Eitz HaSadeh, it should be read rhetorically. Is a tree a person with the ability to protect itself so that it should suffer famine and thirst like the inhabitants of the city? In other words, the tree can't protect itself. If the tree can't protect itself, then why should you harm it? So let's go back to the text for a moment. Let's look at the screen. Again, there are two interpretations that are being offered here. One interpretation sees those four words, if you can underline them, Shuli, please, dear Shuli, in the Hebrew, Ki ha'adam Eitz HaSadeh. Those four words, according to Ibn Ezra, that is a declarative fragment. It's a declarative phrase. Why shouldn't you cut down the tree even in war? Because the human being, Eitz HaSadeh, the human being depends. Don't fell trees because human beings depend upon that tree. I see you're going to the Sefaria now, Shuli. You're in Deuteronomy 20, and we're in
I was
Deuteronomy.
having trouble because whenever I highlight it, then it moved me to another parak.
Okay,
so
that's fine.
I'm going
it's
back.
Just fine. It's Deuteronomy 20:19. So that's the Ibn Ezra. Ki Adam Eitz HaSadeh. But Rashi understands that phrase as a question mark. Ki Adam Eitz HaSadeh, is the human being, is the tree a human being? A human being has the ability to protect herself or himself. A tree doesn't. So I want to stop here for a moment and ask you, now that we have the Ibn Ezra and we have Rashi, what's the deeper difference between these interpretations in the way we look at the well-being, the welfare, if you will, of a tree? Again, once again, to summarize, I know I've said it a few times, don't cut the tree down. And we have two interpretations. One interpretation is because the human being depends upon trees, don't cut it down. The other interpretation is, what, should you cut down a tree that can't defend itself? Human beings can run from war. Human beings have some capacity to defend themselves. Tree has no capacity to defend themselves. What do you think? Any thoughts on this?
Yes,
What's the deeper difference
I
between
see
these two
Lance's
interpretations?
hand. I see Lance's
Hello?
hand, and
East Shore Road, Long Beach.
I have a thought on that. There's some trees.
I have a thought, if I may.
Carrot trees. You have to know which ones are well are.
Rabbi, I'm not
trees-
sure how to
Of course, I have
moderate
proof.
this.
May I have a quick thought that I
Okay.
think will help.
Right.
Rabbi,
Well,
maybe
can I speak?
Lance
No.
can go first, followed by Zalman.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Verse 20. Only trees that you know do not yield food may be destroyed. You may cut them down for constructing siege works against a city that is waging war on you until it has been reduced. So there are trees that yield food, and there are trees that don't. The trees that don't, you can cut down and use in war.
Right. Well, you're now entering into the Talmudic debate, and as usual, Lance, you've entered into it. And the environment issue is such an all-embracing, it's such a big issue that it requires analysis, and you very properly began the analysis. And by the way, in the DAF, yesterday we finished the tractate Vitin. So I would like Shuli to send to everyone, on every page of the DAF, I try to do a spiritual thought. I hope you'll find it of meaning. Today we're actually starting Kiddushin, enough of divorce. We want to get to getting married and love. That's what this text deals with. But Lance, just if I may, you did it as usual. You hit it on the head, hit it out of the park. But I want to concentrate just on these 4 words for a moment. Do we read it as a declarative statement, or do we read it as a rhetorical question? And based on that, I think are 2 approaches to the environment, even though what Lance said has to be mentioned. That is, what Lance is saying is the mandate to not to cut down trees only fruit bearing, or does it apply to that which is not fruit bearing? Actually, it could have something to do with what we're talking about now.
Avi, I don't think that it has anything to do with the trees, actually. I think it has to do with that the trees nourish people. And if you're in war and you kill the people and then you kill the trees, you're also killing the next generation, because then there's no food for them.
Right.
But,
And Tova, that actually is the, I think that's the interpretation.
Hello?
Yes, Salman.
That's why the trees, you know what, they could be a share of trees. That's why, and that's what we learned with Rabbi Ezra. That's why we should keep Ezra too. You know, he's a very good teacher.
Yes.
In his class about share of trees. Those are trees like Canaanites make in the goddess of Shera. That they don't distinguish that. And he had a nice discussion for 4 days, 4 weeks. That's why you should keep him. He's a good rabbi. I'm an advocate. I'm always an advocate.
Yes.
Okay, that's mine.
Well, Zalman, I want to just first of all, thank you, Zalman. I just want to say something about what Tova said.
Hold on, Estelle. Let Ravavi speak, and then we'll
Just for a
see who's
moment,
next.
Tova, what you said, I believe, is what the Ibn Ezra is saying. The Ibn Ezra is saying, don't cut down this tree, this fruit-bearing tree, because it produces food, not only for your generation, but the next generation. But the way you interpret it, Tova, and I think this is the Ibn Ezra, why are we kind to the tree? Not so much for the tree, but for ourselves. It's not concern for the tree. Don't cut the tree because the tree produces food for the human being. Be kind to the tree because the tree produces what a human being needs to sustain herself or himself.
But we're protecting the generation after the people that
Yes.
we're killing.
And now you're adding not just be kind to the tree for the human being, for humans living in this generation, but humans living in the next generation.
that will follow those who were killed.
Yes.
Before.
But what both have in common is be kind to the tree because we're concerned about the welfare of the human being.
Because we're compensating for those that we're killing.
From a different point of view.
Yes, Estelle. Thank you, Tova.
There's a full page in today's science section of the Times, a full
Oy
page.
vey, the times.
I'm not saying a dirty word, please. It's in the science section, and it says they're trying to help the redwood trees, because not only does the tree, you're talking about human beings, but it controls the water, the fish in the water, the flowers that grow, that all it's all part of not only being human, but it's part of being part of a world. I haven't read the whole article yet, but it's something.
Beautiful.
But it's very apropos the topic that you're choosing today,
Beautiful.
because the tree is
Beautiful.
the center of everything.
Right, Estelle, I want to just say what I see, Estelle, your interpretation, my dear Estelle, is the Midrash. How about
Oh,
that,
dear.
Estelle? Oh dear, because the Midrash reads it as a rhetorical, what is a tree a human being? A human being has the capacity, as we said before, to protect herself or himself. A tree. Who's supposed to put a tree? What do you want from a tree?
A
A tree is beautiful, as you said. It's not just the tree. I don't want to quote the Times. I'm quoting the Estelle. The tree is the water. The tree is this. The tree is that. The tree is all of that. So, but that's that interpretation, Estelle. Just watch the nuance, and this is classic Nechama Leibovitz, my teacher. May her soul rest in peace. She would look at two commentaries, and then she would say, "Well, what can I draw from those commentaries?" And what she would say is, the Ibn Ezra, his concern for nature is not so much nature, but the concern is we need nature so that human beings can live well. Whereas Rashi says our concern for nature, not that we're not concerned for ourselves, our concern for nature doesn't begin and end with the human being. We're concerned for nature itself. We're concerned for the tree, for the tree's sake. The tree is a living organism. Water, for water's sake itself, not only because the human being can't survive without water. We're born in water. We became a people when we marched through water, when we look for life on other planets, we're looking for water. Mayim Chayim in Israel. It's not only that. Water too is in existence. You know, the Kuzari says that there are different levels of existence. There is the inanimate, the stone. Then there is, he says, vegetation. That's the tree. Then there is the animal. Then there is the human being, the medaber. He gets into trouble when he says that there's another level, and that's the Jew, which sounds like frankly, a little racist. Got to be very, very careful with that. But that's for another discussion. But the nature itself, so I want to tell you a quick story, anecdotally. These past 2 days, a dear student, David Kasher, who just a wonderful young man, he's been through so much, and he's found himself, and he studied at Torat, became a rabbi, and became actually the assistant to Sharon Rouse, I believe is the pronunciation, a very well-known rabbi in Car in Los Angeles. Maybe Ted and Bev, your family knows of her. And now is working and teaching Torah for Hadar. So he married late, and we had these long life discussions, and I made it. I just promised myself that if he would get married, I would be at his wedding. So he's getting married. I said, I'll be at the wedding. And he said to me, I'd say exactly, he said, Rabbi, I always dreamt you'd do my wedding, but I don't want you to come to my wedding. It's too far away. You're in New York. The wedding is in San Francisco. And not only is it in San Francisco, you got to get into a car and drive for 4 hours. I said, David, I made a promise I would be there, and I don't have to do the wedding. I just want to be there. I want to be a fly on the wall. Anyway, he finally allowed me to come. And so I left. I got up this Saturday night after Shabbat. I left the house at 4 in the morning. And my dear Freddie took me to the airport, grabbed the 6:30 flight, flew, was picked up by another student, a wonderful young man, Shmuley Yankelevitz. He did the wedding and we traveled for 4 hours. But oh my God, I've never, I thought all the beauty of the world is in Israel, but I saw stuff here I've never seen. I mean, most of Europe that I've seen, I thought about it. I've really never seen the world except through the eyes of a protester. I never saw France except when I went to France to protest. Never saw Austria protest, Geneva, on and on, everything. Just, I never even saw Auschwitz. I only got to the gates, jumping over. I just never did. This was one of the first time I'm looking at the world, and we're going into the woods where David's grandfather had built a house from the trees. So I want to show you some pictures of the redwoods, of the trees. You'll see God. So just look at some of these pictures.
I'm trying, sorry.
Okay.
Trying to load.
Well, you know what? It pays to wait for this, because this is fern country. This is really just like, whoa. Okay, I'll keep talking as you.
Avi,
Yes.
but I think that we have to remember that in this pasuk, we're talking about trees in the context of war. It's not just trees. It's war, where human beings are being maimed and killed. And are you going to maim and kill human beings and also their future depending on trees?
Yeah. It's very well said.
It's not just trees. It's
right.
War. It's
right.
in the context of war.
I do want to say, first of all, thank you so much for that.
There we go.
I don't know if you can see it. Not the picture of the house.
Okay.
I'll show you that later. That I want to show you later. Look at these trees.
Oh my God.
I just like, let's go to the next photo. Shmuley was taking these pictures. It's hard. Goodness sakes.
Go back to this one.
Shh. I've never seen my goodness, the roots of these trees must be so powerful, so strong. And that their backs are so straight. And like I couldn't see the tops of the trees. Now I want to show you where the wedding took place. Let's take a shot at that. And this is now, I believe this house was built from the trees. Go back just a little bit. There it is. It was also, it's not a very good picture. I took this one, but it was all around were trees. Here's the chuppah. This is before the wedding. And here it is. And if I could face everyone, when I was given it was kind enough to let me say one of the blessings. And I just stood there and I looked at Hannah and David. I said, does it get any better than this? I mean, and I just blurted out. I said, this is God country. I quoted Joyce Kilmer. I love quoting, I guess, because when I was in high school, I concentrated most on basketball, but it's very little that I studied in those days, trying to make up for it. But I remember Joyce Kilmer. I think something I shall never see, a poem lovely as a tree. But the last two lines are, poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. There was something about that place. Now, I wanted to say about what Tova said is so true, that the context of our phrase is, of course, within a war context. But I do want to point out that the metaphor of tree is used in many different contexts in the Torah. For example, when we take the Torah and we return it to the ark, we say, Eitz Chaim Hi. The Torah is compared, could be compared to a lot of things. It's compared to a tree of life. It's fascinating.
Right.
You know, it recalls, if you will, it recalls the tree in the Garden of Eden. You would think, well, so why don't we call the Torah the Eitz Hadat, the tree of knowledge? No. It's the tree of life. There's something about the Torah which is something about it. So I only mention that because we're seeing the tree being mentioned in loving, romantic terms outside of the war context, or Tovez, you're just such a great supporter of Torah learning. Of course, every morning we talk about these are the precepts whose fruits a person enjoys in this world. We talk, we talk about the fruits, the perot are enjoyed in this world, and perot is considered to be a metaphor for Torah. So even as we talk about the trees and what should be our loving relationship with the trees, it's not limited to war. It's much more expansive. I know there are a few people who want to say a word, so please.
So I had called on Isaac first. Isaac, did you still want to say something? Or not? Okay. The next is Arnie.
So I have two things. One, Mad Magazine did a parody of the Joyce Kilmer poem, and they said, poems are made by fools, I fear, but only Schlitz can brew a beer. That was their take on it.
That's New York Magazine.
What I actually wanted to say is turning around what a few people have said already. The sensitivity of Rashi's comment towards trees, almost as if they were human beings, to be sensitive to them in the context of war, offers this slim chance that through being sensitive to a tree, you can also be sensitive to an enemy and perhaps shorten the war, do away with the war, negotiate the war away. So I like Rashi's approach because, again, by being sensitive to a tree, you can become possibly more sensitive to the world around you, including the human beings in it.
It's beautiful, honey. Thank you for touching my soul. Really beautiful. Fern, why do you love Wave Hill so much?
So before you just spoke about the Eitz Chaim, that's exactly what I wrote down in the beginning of this whole conversation, that trees represent Eitz Chaim. Trees represent the tree of life. And if we cut out a tree, are we cutting out a life? It represents the same thing to me. So I think that we just have to be kind to the trees and be kind to humans, not just the trees. I think it's a representation of life and of Torah, and we just have to keep it alive and going.
I want to show you something very fascinating. Just now going back to the text itself. And Julie, what I'd like to do is I'd like to compare Genesis chapter 1, sentence 28. I didn't prepare Julie for this source, to Genesis chapter 9, sentence 1. You know, in a certain sense, you can look at the book of Genesis, that there were two creation stories. There was the first creation story, but that doesn't work because there's a deluge. And after the deluge, when Noah emerges, there's almost the second creation story. And that's separate from, chapter 1 compared to chapter 2, Adam 1, Adam 2. But if
Rabbi,
you look at it,
I'm sorry, what was the second source?
chapter 9, sentence 1. There's something fascinating that happens in the text. And of course, the text, if you had asked me, did the world start with one person? The world didn't start with one person. We all know that. The Torah is not, it's not a scientific work. That's not what its goal is. The Torah is to teach about life. I believe the historical stories of Exodus are real, but there are stories in the Bible that are meant to really touch our hearts. And so those creation stories, they're meant to be studied so that we can take from it lessons in life. And if we look at chapter 1, sentence 28, we're picking up the text, very, very famous text. After Adam was created, and Adam actually in the beginning was both male and female. The rib story is really in the Midrash. Really, Adam was one being and was bifurcated into two. But if we look at sentence 28, the sentence says, "Vayivarech otam Elokim." If you look at the previous sentence, it actually says that God created male and female. Look at 27. There it is. Vayivra Elokim et Adam b'tzalmo. God created Adam. I don't think Adam has a proper translation. In his image. I like this translation. And God created humankind in the divine image. B'tselem Elokim bara'oto, creating it, interesting, it in the image of God. Not he or she, it, because it's Adam. And then it says, that's what it says there. This is not even the rib story. Now let's look at the next sentence. God blesses them. God says, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. Vikivshua. Look at that word, and subdue it. I want to stop there. Let's try to remember this text. God blesses Adam and Eve, and says to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth. Now underline the word Vikivshua and subdue it. Now let's go to what we call today the second creation story in Genesis 9. And this is now after Noah is emerging from the ark and the world is starting again. Look at how identical the sentence is, except there's one word which is not there. God blesses Noah and his sons. It's not Adam, it's a new persona, it's Noah. God says, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth. Stop. There's a word that's missing. What word is missing?
Shuha.
Let's go back with Tova.
It's Shuha.
The Kivshua is not there. Isn't that fascinating? In chapter 1, subdue the earth. Chapter 2, suddenly that word is dropped. Now, to the naked eye, when you look at that, okay, so they added a word, they subtracted a word. No, it makes a very, very big difference. If at first you try and you don't succeed, the next time you try, then try it a little differently. Try to make up for the mistakes the first time around. Maybe there was something wrong with the way the command was given. The Kivshua, when Adam is told you can conquer the earth, you can subdue the earth, it leaves the impression you can do with the earth. This is not just the tree. This is a larger macro environmental. You can do with the environment whatever you want to do, you can do. Now Noah's coming out, and notably, the word Kivshua is missing. As I believe, it may have initially been misunderstood to mean that humans can do with the earth what they wish. And this, of course, is not the case. And so that the kivshua of the creation one story is not going to be appearing in that second creation story, to make sure that a term that was presented even by God, which may have been misunderstood, maybe it was, if I can say, maybe missaid. The second time around, it's not going to be said. If we compare, for example, the first 10 commandments, 10 declarations to the second, they're not exactly the same. There are words differences. The second are given within the framework of the 13 attributes of mercy. The first is more judgment. You're given a second chance, that's great. But don't make the same mistake. Try to correct the mistakes, learn from the mistakes, and move forward. And maybe in the beginning, not enough concern was being shown for the environment. And even then, in the Garden of Eden, I think we find one of the most beautiful sentences in the Torah, which deals with our relationship with the environment. It's chapter 2, sentence 15. And this is really a glorious, glorious sentence. And let's take a look at that sentence where God has now placed Adam and Eve. This is actually Adam in the Garden of Eden. And look at the expression found there. Suddenly, it's not the kivshua. This is chapter 2, sentence 15. So it's a little bit further down. And here's what the sentence says. God says to Adam, Vayikach Adonai Elohim et ha'adam. God took the human being, Vayanicheu b'gan Eden, and he placed him in the Garden of Eden. Look at the next two words. Le'avda. Le'avda, I don't like this translation. Le'avda, to serve it. U'lishamra, and to protect it. To serve it. Not that the garden was serving Adam. Adam is to serve the garden. Not that the garden was protecting Adam. Adam was protecting the garden. That's a very different phraseology than the kivshua. And maybe the two have to work in dialectic in the end. If we have to choose between the well-being, if it comes down to it, of a human being or a tree, of course, there's no greater life than the human being, and b'chai b'hem, living is so important. But those who provide for us must be protected, la'avda, to serve it and to protect it. And so on a macro level, the Torah has great concerns for the environment. I really believe that that's what Tashlich is all about on Rosh Hashanah. We're only a month from Rosh Hashanah. It's hard to believe. But on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, we go out, or first day, we go out for Tashlich. We go to the water. Why? Because on that day, we believe God created the world. And so we're going to the waters to look at the world, not only to look at the waters, and to appreciate the waters. God at every moment is recreating the world. There is a mystical thought that, this is a Hasidic thought, but it's actually, it's Lurianic mysticism, that nature, every instant, it's not like the tree is here, was created, and it's here. No, every instant it's being recreated. Some people, this is a lot of Yui, but there's, in mystical, the concept of yesh me'ayin, which is often translated philosophically, the first something came from nothing. God created. It's the cosmological argument. Created something from nothing. Yesh me'ayin, the mystics understood everything that is. The table I'm leaning on. Me'ayin comes from the Ein Sof. God is everywhere. God is in literally everything. Well, God is in the tree. Therefore, la'avda u'lishamra. Just it's very global. This requires a lot of fleshing out the details, and love is in the details. But I'm trying to offer humbly just a general approach to the environment And one of the beautiful stories in the Talmud is going back to the metaphor of the tree, because the Torah's love for trees is reflected throughout the Talmud, many, many rabbinic tales. And there's one beautiful, beautiful tale that is in the Talmud. It's Tanit 5b. Look at this. And so the Gemara relates, when they were taking leave of one another, there were two rabbis. So Reb Nachman said to Rabbi Yitzchak, Master, give me a blessing. Reb Nachman says to Rabbi Yitzchak, give me a blessing. So Rabbi Yitzchak says to Rabbi Yitzchak says to Reb Nachman, I'll tell you a parable. To what is this matter comparable? What will my blessing be? It is comparable. This is really one of the most beautiful tales in the Talmud. It's comparable to one who was walking through a desert and who was hungry, tired, and thirsty. And he found, and it could have been she found, a tree whose fruits were sweet and whose shade was pleasant, and a stream of water walked beneath it. She ate from the fruits of the tree, drank from the water in the stream, and sat in the shade of the tree. The next morning, when she wished to move on, Omar turned, Elon, Elon, tree, oh tree, Mama avarechecha. How will I bless you? I gotta bless the tree. Im omalecha sheyehu perotecha mitukin. If I will bless you that your fruits should be sweet, perotecha mitukin, your fruits are sweet. I know, because it quenched, it satisfied my hunger. If I'm going to bless you, that the shade, and I was just burning in the sun in the desert, that your shade should give shade. You already have that. Shall I bless you? Estelle, this is going to your article from that newspaper, all right, I'll say it the Times. That there should be a stream of water. You already have that. You have it all. Ella, this is it. May it be God's will that all saplings which they plant from you, a little bit further down, next page, it's almost as if the Talmud has you finish a page. So what is it all about? Yihiyu kimotcha. May all that comes from you, O tree, may all that you produce be as beautiful as you. So the one rabbi said to the other, Afata, so too. What should I bless you with? Should I bless you that you should have, if I bless you with Torah, you already have Torah. Wealth, you already have wealth. Children, you have children. Rather may it be God's will that your offspring shall be like you. I find that interesting. It doesn't say that your offspring should be you, like you. In other words, we show the way. In the end, our children and our grandchildren, they take their own journey. They know which way to go. And if I can face everyone, how I had such memories of standing under the chuppah with our daughter, Ilana. Ilan is Ilan. Ilana means tree. Ilan. It's a tree of God. And at Ilana's wedding in 1990, we were then under 24/7 police protection because my life had been threatened. So there were cops everywhere. And Tom Lowe, who was with me at all times, he said, I've been instructed I have to walk down the aisle with you. I said, Tom, please don't do that. We're fine. And thank God he didn't. He walked on the side and And I stood under the chuppah and I looked at Ilana and I said, Ilan, Ilan, tree, oh tree, my Ilana, that. How can I bless you? And under the chuppah, I said, Ilana, with what can I bless you? You and Michael. They have 9 children, thank God, living in Israel and now they have 3 grandchildren, 3 of our great grandchildren. But it's what I find beautiful is that the blessing that we give to other human beings, the metaphor used is a sensitivity towards the tree. To those who disparage the environment, the Torah sends a counter message. Trees must be protected, not only for our sake, but for theirs and for the message they teach us about life. I remember there was one time when I was walking out of shul and our eldest granddaughter, Ariella, was then maybe 4 years old. And you see people in the street, you hug them, you wish them a good Shabbos. And we're moving very slowly. There were a lot of people saying Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos, good Shabbos. And Ariella doesn't really know what's, and suddenly she hears so many good Shabboses. We're walking in front of a tree that used to be in front of what is now the atrium. Then there was just a house there. And she runs up to a tree and she puts her hands around the tree and she says, good Shabbos tree, like out of the mouth of babes. It was like she saw a tree and embraced it. She had internalized the message of the importance of the tree, the importance of protecting the environment. So I wanted to show you a little clip that I sent to Ariella, who is now living with her husband in Israel with 2 children, and one of them is Ilan. The second is Ilan, Nadav and Ilan. So this is what I sent her. I did it myself, so it looks a little distorted. Here's what I sent her. Ariella, I'm in Northern California, and there's these gorgeous trees. And my dear, dear Ariella, I'm thinking about that Shabbat, and you ran up to a tree. And we were saying good Shabbos to everybody in Riverdale, and good Shabbos tree. Good Shabbos tree. Look at this, Ariella. Wow. I love you so much, Ariella, Ezra, and Nadav, and Ilan. Good Shabbos tree. Good Shabbos, Ariella. My little girl is now a wife and a mother of 2 beautiful children. So proud of you. Very proud of them. By the way, the second child is Nadav and Ilan. Ilan means tree. Just a few months old. He actually was named after Ilan Ganelis. Ilan Ganelis was a young man from West Hartford who was going to a friend's wedding at Long in Israel. Tragically, he was a victim of terror, and so about 2-3 weeks later, their child was born. They named him Ilan, good Shabbos tree. So with that, let me open it up before I do want to tell all of you. Let's open this up just for a minute or two and we'll call it a day.
Lance and Linda have been waiting very patiently. Lance and then Linda. And let me just see before you go, let me see who else. And Estelle has a hand up. Anyone else that I don't see?
Can I just say something very quickly because I have to go? I just want to point out to Avi that he showed us a natural progression in the Torah from Kivshuha to people who were just created, then later generation to have till the land, work the land. But by the time he came to Noah, there were people who had lived in the land. He didn't need to say Kivshuha or anything.
So you don't think there was a need to say it?
No, because it's a different generation. They had already lived in the
I
land.
see.
Kivshuha were people who didn't know anything. This
see.
is the world in which you were created. And the next time, it's now that you know the world this is how you have to work the world.
Right.
By the time he comes to Noah, Noah has already lived in the world. He's experienced the flood. He knows
Right.
the world. He doesn't.
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you, Tova.
Okay,
Feel well. And
Yeah.
good Shabbos,
Lance-
Tree. Good Shabbos, Tova.
You and to you. I love you, Avi. Oh, and by the way, Ben Skydell quoted you in Shabbos, this past Shabbos.
Oh, he did. Good.
Yes, he did.
What was the quote?
Well, he was talking about transitions and how you always pointed out how a transition, like your, your mezuzah ceremony, and how important it is each new stage.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so
You
because
should be
the
quoted.
parish about
You'll be
transition.
quoted forever.
Yeah, and he knew that quoting you was so
Oh,
wonderful.
I thought he quoted you.
No, he quoted you. He quoted you,
He
and
should
how
quote
I
you.
appreciated that. Right.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Linda?
Oh, I think Lance and then Linda
Lance?
and Estelle.
Okay.
Okay. What is the greatest secret in Judaism? The greatest secret in Judaism is God has a wife. What is the name of God's wife? Asherah. And what is the symbol of God's wife? A tree. Rav Ezra has spent weeks studying the Asherah tree in the Talmud.
That's what I
In the
said. That's
Talmud,
what I said.
in the Talmud, the Asherah tree is, worshiping the Asherah tree is considered idolatry. However, in the book of Kings, I believe you'll check, Asherah is
Hey,
not considered,
idol. Yeah.
well, considered, okay. But scholars, if you'll pardon the
Yes.
expression, have determined that the ancient Israelites worshipped Asherah.
Yeah, they
Now
do.
think about everything that has gone on in this class. Think about the wedding. Think about the trees, okay? And think about the nourishment, the food that we're talking about in that sentence that you've gone over. And from my perspective, as someone in the historical and comparative method, we do not project contemporary thoughts onto ancient thoughts. We attempt to find what the original audience,
Right.
how the original audience came up with this.
Right.
Now, the ultimate in this is that the tree, scientifically, mathematically, the tree and the menorah have the same pattern,
Yeah.
which is a recursion. So you
Beautiful.
see the circles in the menorah, but you can't see the
Beautiful.
recursion. It's not obvious.
Yes.
And my example, glorious example, is the FedEx truck. And what is on the FedEx truck that doesn't exist? The FedEx arrow. You haven't seen the FedEx arrow? The FedEx arrow, the E and the X, it appears magically. And when the logo was first shown to the administrators there, the bosses, they didn't see it. And I didn't see it until a friend of mine, Arnie Gordon, pointed out to me. And since then, I can't miss it. Every time I see it, I see that arrow. So what we're talking about is what I would call a hierophany, which is a manifestation of the sacred in the profane.
Great. Lance, I do want to say, I think you said something that touched me when you said you're more in the world of history scholarship. So you want to find out what the text is saying to that generation. It reminds me of what Dove said. That's exactly what he does. What does it mean? And I'm trying to find out what it's saying to this generation. And I think both approaches.
Couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more.
You know, I think your approach is a very important approach. I think it, Linda, I'm waiting eagerly.
Okay, I'm a mother of an Ilana also, so we have
Oh,
some,
great, okay.
we have something in common. Okay, I'm going to read what I wrote down. I said, when we look at the magnificence of trees, we should be in awe of God's creation, and it helps us remember his sovereignty, even when we are at war with others. We are not the prominent ones. God, the creator, is. So when you look at the tree,
Beautiful.
it's something that you're thinking of even when you're at war with others. The magnificence, you were looking at the magnificence of the tree.
Beautiful.
It's like when you go to the Grand Canyon or somewhere else and you see these, it reminds you there's God there. This is not something random.
I love that, Linda. That's a beautiful, and certainly at war, when you're trying to be victorious,
and you feel like you're powerful, but you have to remember it's not from you.
Right. You feel it's all you, and therefore look at the tree and recognize it's not about you. There's something bigger. I love that, Linda. Beautiful thought.
I guess it's my turn, but it's less.
Let me let me hear an upper.
No, all I wanted to say is, believe it or not, my daughter's Hebrew name is Ilana. I guess maybe it was popular, but it was one of the things that my husband wanted to keep as a reminder of his birthplace in Czechoslovakia, where he grew up on a farm with trees. However, what I also wanted to say was, we have a chalet in the Berkshires, and when we had it built, we didn't want to cut down any trees, so we're sitting in the midst of trees. In addition to which, when the kids were little, we took a trip around the country, and we were in Yosemite, and one of the park rangers came over to us and said he would like to take a picture of my kids next to the tree to use at one of these folders to send out to people as just a reminder that Yosemite is around. So I have a picture of my son and daughter standing next to one of these giant trees that was used as a pamphlet to send out as an advertisement for Yosemite National Park. So there you are. Very, very just ordinary stuff.
Beautiful.
On a tree.
Beautiful. Anyone else? Any thoughts?
Avi, Julie, may I?
Of course, Judy.
Sure. Okay. Just a thought. This is taking poetic license with the sentence Eitz Chaim He. If we add a hey after the Eitz, make it a Eitzah, that means advice, which means like the Torah itself, Eitzah Chaim He. Anyway, so what was I going to say? The Torah
I love that. And Judy, you
to be our advice for life. And the teaching of the Torah is the Eitz itself.
I love that, Judy. And you have and I want to encourage you, keep doing this. You have a way of looking at the Hebrew and seeing it so more encompassing. And I think what you're saying about Eitz and Eitzah is absolutely correct. Convinced.
My mother of blessed memory used to always talk about, don't give me any Eitzes.
Yeah.
Any ideas?
I just want to close by saying this. When I was thinking whether after traveling for 2 days, and I knew that at first I was going to travel through Sunday night, and my grandchildren vetoed that. But I started out yesterday at 8 in the morning from wherever we were, and didn't get back until last night at about midnight. So I was thinking, maybe I should just not do this class. And I just felt no matter what, I just had to do the class. And I'm so right, just to listen to all of you. It touches my soul deeply to hear truly not so much what I have to say, but what you're saying. Every person who has said something has really contributed and helped me understand very selfishly all of this on another level. And I'm deeply, deeply, deeply appreciative. So something I look forward to. And I just want to wish everybody, I want to wish the trees a good Shabbos, right? And to wish everybody a good Shabbos. Thank you for coming on. All my blessings and love.
And thank you, Rabbi.
And, shalom,
Thank
shalom.
you.
Kodesh Tov.